Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to the new Brit workshop. Festool have recently introduced their Domino Connector System. It's designed to work with the Domino DF700, the larger of the two machines, and it comes in two versions. There's a corner connector that you might use for doing something like, say, a bed where you join the ends to the rails and so on. And there are straight connectors which you might use for such things like joining pieces of kitchen worktop. Now, I recently received a free sample of one of the corner connectors, and I'm sure many other people did as well. And with it was a really well written explanatory leaflet, which actually does show you how to go about using them in very clear detail. But I thought, well, I can't go about making a video about this unless I have a few more, and also the ones that you use for doing the kitchen worktop joining and so on. So I contacted Festool UK, and they very kindly sent me their pack which they keep in their training room, and I've got strict instructions to return this very shortly when they have the first training session about the new system. And this one is by no means full, as I'm sure it's been used for all sorts of demonstrations before it came to me. I'm just going to describe the various parts that make up a corner connector. And in order to help me, I've got two joints already made. One is this one, which just consists of a single corner connector. That's not really realistic. And this is a proper joint because each joint should have associated with it a normal domino. So we've got those two. Now, the first part to mention is the anchor bolt. That's this item, and it's got a thread on this end, a smooth section here. This is a hex-shaped end here, and that is 10 millimeters in diameter. And then there's a hole through here, and it's important that you notice that there's a dish side here. The other side is flat, and that comes into play later. Then we have an expansion anchor. And this item you can see here, but you can't see it on this one because it's actually buried in the leg. And the way this connects is the anchor bolt goes through, and it then makes contact with these parts of the expansion anchor to make these wings expand outwards. And then we have these domino half shells, and these basically fit onto the shaft of the anchor bolt, and you can just see one here, you can see the other one there, and it provides a domino shaped end to the anchor bolt and make sure that it's in line with the hole as I'm showing you now. So that's in place, and now that hole is just there. The final part is the transverse anchor, and this fits into the rail. There's one here and there's one just here, and what that does, it has a screw threaded pin in it, and that pin would eventually engage into the slot here on the anchor bolt. And by screwing that pin in, that provides the actual gripping between the rail and the leg, or between this rail and that leg. And that's the simple joint. Now let's go and make this particular joint. Now, when you're planning the layout of your domino connector joints, it's important that you understand one fundamental principle, and that is that you have to have at least one normal domino associated with each joint, because that normal domino will be the one that stops the wood from twisting. And I can give you an example of how important that is. Here is a joint I've made which only consists of one connector. I've loosened it off a bit, and you can see it can rotate. Well, that's the nature of the design. That's pretty reasonable. And when it's tight, okay, it's not going to move now, but as the wood dries out, that could rotate a little, and you don't want that to happen. So the integrity of the whole joint does rely on at least one normal domino. Now, the way that you might choose to lay these out might be one connector and one domino. And for wider joints, you might decide to have either two connectors and one domino, or two dominoes and one connector, however it suits your plan. Now, in this example, I'm going to have one connector and one domino. And the other thing to bear in mind is that the connector system center should be no less than 37 millimeters from the edge of any rail that it's sitting in. So in my case, I've got one here, and I've set that exactly on 37 millimeters. And I've made then a judgment where I want this ordinary domino to go. And I've put a pencil line at those two centers. Now you can take advantage of the pins on your domino to do your joint layout, and there are all sorts of little telltale markers on the bottom of your domino to help you with your joint planning. But for simplicity for now, I'm going to show normal pencil marks, and I'm going to transfer them from one piece to the other by just drawing a simple line, and that will help me with my planning. Now, so this is how perhaps it's a bed, or perhaps it's a table, is going to fit together at this joint. This is the leg and this is the rail, and I've got the two lines transferred between the two pieces of wood. And this is the top edge where I've got that 37 millimeter center. Now, in order to set up the domino, it's very straightforward. First of all, make sure you've got the 14 millimeter cutter in there. Next, set the depth to 25 millimeters and move the registers for the upper and lower limit for your depth of cut, one at 25 and the other at 50. So I can move that to there, and that would be a 50 millimeter deep cut, back to there, and that's 25. That speeds life up. Make sure that you've got the width setting on the narrow setting here. And then we need to work out the height of your cut, and that's dictated by the height that this fence sits. Now there's a quick stop here, and I've selected the 30 millimeter setting. That means that if I were to cut here, the center line of the domino cut would be 30 below this surface. Now that's perfect for me because that's almost at the center of this piece of wood. And I'm now going to do the domino cuts for the ordinary domino and also for the connector. So I have my height of cut set, I've got my depth of cut set at 25, I've got my narrow setting, I know I've got the right cutter in there, everything is tightened up, and so I'm ready to go. So this hole will be for the ordinary domino, and this one will take the expansion anchor here. Now we're going to turn to the rail, and in this case I'm going to have my depth of cut now at 50 millimeters, and this at the top here will take the anchor bolt, and here will take the ordinary domino. Now my stock thickness is 36 millimeters. So I want a depth of cut to the center of the cutter of 18. And that's not available as one of the quick settings here. And all I've got to do is set this onto 18. And that's that set on 18, which means my cut now will be at the center of this piece of wood. My setting here is still on narrow. I move this to the 50 millimeter depth. I'm now going to cut two slots. Now, as these slots are a little bit deeper, you may find a little bit of sawdust gets in the end there. Just give a little tap out. Right, next we're going to make the slot for the transverse anchor. Remember, you're only doing this for those slots which have a connector in them, not for the normal slots which are having an ordinary domino. So we've only got one to do, and it's here. Now, in order to get the depth right, remember my center in this particular case was 18 millimeters, and we've then got to have at least 10 more than that. So 18 and 10 is 28. My nearest depth stop is 30. So I'm going to set that to 30 for this particular cut that I'm going to do. Next, I've got to make sure this slot goes in 40 millimeters from this end. And as we'll be holding the machine this way, that 40 is going to be measured on this scale. And the simple way to do that is to use one at the quick setting, which is 40. And obviously that's why Festool designed it this way, because the majority of settings are available as quick settings on the machine. Now, I can sight this quite simply. Through here, I can see my pencil line. And remember, we're only doing this for the connector, not for the domino. So let's have a quick resume of what we've done. We've cut in the leg 2 domino slots. One for the real domino, which is the lower of the two, and the upper one, which is going to be for the connector system. And this particular slot here is going to be the one in which the expansion anchor fits into. The way this fits in is very simple. You're going to push it in, maybe a little tight, and the simplest thing to do is to help it in like so. And it's important that this ends up flush. What we need to do is to expand that anchor. At the moment, it's only pushed in there. And the way to do this is to screw this in. Then if you take a 10mm spanner, you can then tighten it further. And you'll find there's a bit of resistance to start with. And that's going to be as the anchor starts to bite into the material. And if we look at this in cross-section, you can see what's happening. This is screwing in, and that end of the anchor bolt is pushing these 2 wings of the expansion anchor outwards, and they're biting into the material. And when it gets to a certain point, this smooth end will have passed through that gap there, and it will have no further tightening effect. And I'm sure I've reached that point now. So that's that one prepared. And now my next stage is to turn to the rail. In the rail, we've got our 2 domino slots, which are 50mm deep. And the one for the connector system has this additional hole here, which is going to take the transverse anchor, which will be fitting down in like so. And if we look in the end here, you can probably just see, just here, the hexagonal hole in there, ready to take the end of the bolt. Now, at this stage, it's important to remember that the end of the anchor bolt that is going to be presented to the transverse anchor has to have that cutout piece here. And we also have to remember that we've got to put a domino in the other hole. So I'm going to pop that in now. Get that in like so. And now we push the 2 parts together. Like so. And once it's pretty close to being home and dry, we're then going to move it down like so. Take the hex key and tighten up here. And this is going to make the joint very, very tight. You may have just heard it tightening up. And there that is. And now, in order to finish it off, we can hide this hole here by using one of 3 different colours of cover. And obviously, in this particular case, it looks as though this light brown one is going to be just the job. You could also have grey or dark brown. And so that's that joint. Now, when it comes to taking this apart, you just slip off the cover, undo the connector, and then open up the joint. And there you have it. Now, in reality, you would probably glue the domino into this particular slot, the longer slot, or it could be in the short slot, whichever you prefer, and it would then not be glued into the other half. So you've got to just think which you would prefer it to be glued into, but that's the simplicity of that joint. Well, that's the end of part 1. In part 2, I'm going to do a very simple strength test on this joint that I've just made. And then I'm going to show you how to join 2 pieces of work surface together, as I've done here, using the connection system. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.